So welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, and this is your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today we're talking about automation and innovation in the hemp and cannabis industry. We are here live at the World Trade Center. I'm here with Arnar and Denny. They're with Greenvault Systems. I'm here with Jason of 420 Wholesale Pack, and then there's Andy of Poseidon Asset Management.
Innovation can be described as something that transforms a market or creates a new one through simplicity, convenience, affordability, and accessibility. So from your experience, how do you describe disruptive innovation? Can you give any examples, and what's the best way to disrupt the market?
I think I'd break that out into, a few aspects of context. So first things first, the cannabis industry is in of itself rather disruptive. And I think that context is important because I think in broader technology, pharma, beverage, et cetera, marginal innovation isn't really applauded that much. So, whereas in the cannabis industry, simply taking something and being the X of cannabis can actually be very beneficial. And so I think in the context of cannabis, sometimes marginal innovation is the best track and actually the safest route. So I'd use a good example of actually an investment we're very proud of, which is Hedge, which is actually a data analytics company. They use actually machine learning to harvest, POS, point of sale data, real time, aggregate it, and summarize it in a meaningful way. Whereas I think in the broader market, I think being the Nielsen of cannabis might be something that looks like piggybacking and not awarded in the same way. Given the challenges and the hurdles that exist in cannabis, this is actually extraordinarily useful. And actually, I think it's really ironic that Headset used to market themselves as the Nielsen of cannabis because they've actually recently partnered with Nielsen. And whereas, Nielsen might be looking at the industry and you might think that, once safe banking occurs and once the States Act is passed, this might be something that Nielsen comes in and floods the market and crushes, companies like Headset. The nuance of cannabis are so unique that there's actually a very large moat here. And Nielsen sees the advantage of partnering with a company like Headset, allowing them to grow organically within the space, and actually see them more as a takeout target, someone to acquire and bolt onto their core operations rather than attempting to actively manage that space on their own. And so I think that's one perspective, kind of this marginal disruption perspective. I think you also have true raw organic disruption, which is much more rare. I use the example that we're all familiar with Delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. And when we ingest that, it's actually partially oxidized in the liver enzymatically, and it becomes 11-hydroxy tetrahydrocannabinol. And I actually had the pleasure of just recently speaking with some great companies in New York City and kind of picking their brains on where they see the beverage market going. And all these companies are kind of pursuing this marginal disruption approach. They're experimenting with different surfactants and different emulsification technologies, but in the grand scheme of things, this is marginal disruption, and it's poised for a new player to come in, and if you can actually metabolize Delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol to 11-hydroxy tetrahydrocannabinol, that cannabinol is already water soluble, and so there'd be none of these issues with turbidity or surfactants kind of interacting with different drugs. And so I think that's one area where true raw scientific disruption is great and something to be applauded. Whereas the broader industry really just needs this marginal disruption, entrepreneurs to come in and bring the same services that any institutional established player would have, like Coca-Cola or Pfizer, et cetera, and market those to cannabis and tailor them also to be, optimized for this unique space.
We'll be citing Headset's data analytics in a couple of items here in the podcast. But yeah, data is definitely the second largest investment vehicle behind multi-state operators. Harvest just got bought out by Canopy for $3.4 billion, and then so the third investment vehicle is Cannabis Cafes, and we haven't even seen that. So that is huge. It's going to definitely define I think what happens. So with that, I really appreciate you all being here with me today. So with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is your Cannabis Business Podcast, The Talking Hedge. Like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.